pension age rises to match men. A 2007 document's been found which led to officials stopping sending out automatic pension forecast letters. Jane Cowley, the WASPI campaign director, told LBC the rethink is welcome.
They recognise that they took the wrong decision last year, that they needed to look at things more carefully than they appear to have done, and I'm pleased that they're now going to be taking that step to look at the whole thing again.
The Justice Secretary has apologised and promised accelerating upgrades after it emerged 91 prisoners have been released by mistake in the past 7 months. David Lammy told MPs 3 are still on the run. People waiting for their asylum claim to be processed can continue to be housed at the protest-hit Bell Hotel in Essex. Epping Forest District Council has failed to get a permanent injunction blocking their accommodation. And the Culture Secretary says the BBC must renew its mission for the modern age as it fights to restore trust. Donald Trump's threatening a $1 billion lawsuit over a panorama edit of one of his speeches that led to the Director General resigning. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 112 points at 98.99. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.14. LBC weather, rain easing tonight and moving into the east. Mild in the south but chilly in the north with a low of 6 degrees. Rain moving north tomorrow, leaving clear spells behind with highs of 15. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello and welcome to Tuesday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. On my panel tonight, sitting to my left, Rachel Cunliffe, Associate Political Editor of the new Statesman. Next to her, Sir Alec, Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold, who's also the Vice President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. To my right, Natasha, Labour MP for Croydon East. And to her right, Tom Slater, the editor of Spiked Online. They're here to take your questions. 0345 6060 973.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's start off with a text from Andrew in Fulham, who says, today the ONS released unemployment figures, which showed another increase in unemployment to 5%, the highest level since the pandemic. Is this down to Labour policies? And is the panel worried that more tax rises now impacting consumer spending will lead to even more job losses for working people, adding further to the welfare bill? Rachel Cunliffe.
I don't think it's the news that the government would have wanted to receive today. A couple of things to say. One is that I think it's very, very slightly higher than the employment rate that was forecast. I think it was forecast to be 4.9%. It's 5%. Obviously, that's not great, but that is still within the line of what was anticipated. And there are a whole load of reasons for that, some of which are global, some of which are to do with energy costs, and particularly higher energy costs for businesses that make it more expensive to do everything, and hiring comes into that. But there is a question about tax rises on businesses in the last budget, the national insurance increase for employers. And there's also questions about just the uncertainty in the British economy that is making employers reluctant or hesitant to make big hiring decisions. So I think it's a bit of both, but it's certainly not the news that Rachel Reeves would have wanted 2 weeks out from a budget.
Alec Shelbrooke.
Well, it is a whole range of factors, and there is no denying that the national insurance rise in particularly has had a big effect, because for people who employ people part-time, it's had a much bigger effect on their bottom line than people who employ people full-time. And, you know, it's one thing to say there are global influences happening in terms of tariffs or whatever, but business confidence is low and people don't know what's going to happen next. Spending's going up and up and up. The government have made attempts to cut spending in the welfare bill and ended up increasing it whilst on the floor of the House.
But so if confidence is so low, why is the FTSE at record levels?
Look, I'm talking about, I have no idea how to answer that one, Iain, but I will say this, is that the businesses I'm talking to in my constituency, the small businesses, the medium businesses, have two major issues. One, the national insurance going up, and two, the energy costs. And we have the highest energy costs in Europe because of the way we've coupled the gas price to the electricity price, the way that we've put huge amounts of levies on for renewable energy. Now, we may sit here and spout how wonderful all this is and that it's for a greater good, but ultimately at the end of the day, businesses can't operate in that that environment. And there are real concerns, especially businesses in the ceramics industry, and I've got some of those within my constituency, that when the carbon tax credit is removed, that they've suddenly got to find anything from 14 to 27 million pounds overnight, especially say if you're making bricks or something like that, which is highly energy intensive. And where does that then come in after that? It comes in from India, made with coal on a ship. We're not cutting our carbon emissions, we're exporting them. And by doing that, we're just destroying jobs in this country. And that leads to the issue of where's the sensible way forward in getting to a greener economy without destroying it along the way, because it hits businesses, it's hitting confidence, and people are struggling to keep people employed. Natasha Irons.
Well, I think just to pick up on that last point around jobs and the link to sort of energy, the future of this country and the future of good, stable, good jobs for people across the country does sit with renewable energy. We've got 800,000 jobs predicted to come through that. And reducing our energy bills and reducing our energy costs with renewables will help not just households but businesses. And the government has done a lot over very recently to take down those energy costs by giving money back to very large energy intensive industries. In terms of the employment figures in general, of course, we always want to see that figure come down, but we have to also remember that over 350,000 people have entered the workforce since last year. Wages are still continuing to rise.
That happens every year. And then you have people at the other end leaving.
Well, it might not happen, mightn't it? It's good that it's still happening then, isn't it? That hasn't stopped happening, that people are still entering the workforce and that wages are still continuing to increase, because unless people can feel the benefit of work, it feels it's difficult to continue on. So seeing those things continue to improve is great. Look, nobody wants to see unemployment go up, but we're on a path where we're going to start turning these things around, and getting people back onto the workforce is where we need to be.
Do you think that people are confident that you can do that, though? Because, since you came in, growth has been pretty anemic ever since COVID. But these unemployment figures show that the levels of unemployment it's back to where we were at the end of COVID. And that can't be spun any other way than being bad news, can it?
Look, I didn't say it was great news, but what I'm saying is that we have to focus on how we get people back into the workforce. There's been a massive amount of investment in young people, for example. Very recently, we've had more than 1 in 8 young people out of work and not in education or training. We can't sustain that as a country. This government is invested heavily in making sure that those young people get the jobs that they deserve through the youth guarantee, for having youth hubs that are about having targeted mental health support for people in these areas. We are building back a workforce that's fit for the future, and it's going to take time to get that off the ground.
Do you accept, though, the decision to put up national insurance for employers in the last year's budget? That has been pretty catastrophic for unemployment levels.
I think it would have been pretty catastrophic if the Chancellor hadn't come in and stabilised the economy. I think it would have been pretty catastrophic if we allowed the NHS to continue to spiral in the way that it was. Decisions had to be made at the time, and that's what went ahead.
Tom Slater.
I think that was a very valiant defence of quite a poor economic picture, if I'm honest. I think there are a couple of things here which need to be said. One of which is that, of course, the Labour Party had an awful economic inheritance. Of course, the broader international picture doesn't bode well for our own national economy, but they have made that worse. And we've been talking about the national insurance hike on employers. That was obviously going to lead to more unemployment. You tax anything, people buy less of it. If you tax jobs, there are fewer jobs. This is something which has been completely clear-cut. Again, if we think about the energy policies, yes, many of these have been continuations of things that have been in place under successive Tory governments, but because of the embrace of net zero, because of the embrace of unreliable renewable energy, it's one of the reasons that we have amongst the highest industrial energy prices in the world. So at the very least, we'd like to hear some honesty about this, and a recognition that a country and an economy in which unemployment is trending in the wrong direction is not on the right path in any meaningful sense.
Should we take any solace from the fact that unemployment in this country is much lower than it is in most others? I surprised you didn't come out with that one, Natasha.
Well, thank you. I'll put that down in my notebook for next time.
I think we should, and I think there's also a discussion to be had about what the jobs are and what some of the trade-offs are. And this is something that the Labour government came in, they've got the Employment Rights Bill that is making its way through various stages, that is about stronger workplace safeguards and protections and making sure that the jobs people have are good jobs and jobs that they want to have and they feel financially secure in those jobs. Now, I spoke to numerous Labour people before the election and I said, would you be happy with, do you understand there's a trade-off there, that some of the jobs that were bad jobs, that were really insecure, where the power dynamics were very much against the worker and where they were poorly paid and where essentially workers were being exploited for the benefit of these big corporations that were taking advantage of them, some of those jobs will disappear. And they said, yes, that's the trade-off. It's a transition. Part of that transition possibly
so easy to play with other people's lives, isn't it?
But if you want to get to the end point where the jobs that we have, workers have a solid set of rights and feel financially secure and feel secure enough to be able to make spending decisions, whether that's buying a house or starting a family or starting a business, there is a transition there. That's not something that I've heard so many of those Labour figures say since the election, because as you say, it's very, very painful, but there is a transition and there is a trade-off involved.
The caller talked about consumer spending and confidence. I think if you're on a bad 0-hour contract and you can't plan ahead, you're not going to be outspending. And so things around trying to bring stability to people's lives, trying to bring stability to their work so they can plan ahead and they can invest in their own lives, that's exactly where we are.
But surely one of the criteria for judging whether this new employment rights bill will be a success is, will it create a single job? And I would say that the opposite is probably true, where if you say to an employer, well, if you take someone on day one, they can see you. I mean, that is not going to encourage people to take more people on.
I think a lot of good employers are already doing a lot of the things that are already in Employers' Rights Bill. A lot of this isn't new to a lot of organisations. They're already treating their workers completely fair. But if that's
true, then Natasha's comments don't add up, because she said it would create more jobs going through the transition period, so by bringing this bill in. So if it's true that a lot of big employers are already doing this...
Before.
So I thought we were talking about the Employment Rights Bill.
No, but that was Rachel that was
Rachel.
talking about that.
Sorry.
I've
been promoted to a Labour MP.
It's so confusing having two women on the panel.
Confusing. You don't go to bed and get enough sleep. So sorry, I apologise. Rachel was talking about the Employment Rights Bill being able to create more jobs and moving forward, and Natasha's saying that a lot of companies are already doing this. So those two things don't add up.
No, of course, but in terms of workers' rights, I'm totally in favour of workers' rights, big supporters of trade unions agitating for their workers, but you need some jobs to begin with. And if that's trending in the wrong direction, that's a huge problem. I think the issue that this government needs to grasp, or any government needs to grasp, is that there are some pretty fundamental things wrong with the British economy that needs to be sorted. Energy prices are far too high, the inability to build anything in this country, also the number of people who are finding themselves put out to pasture in historic numbers since the pandemic on out-of-work benefits, disability benefits. These are all issues that Labour have either resiled from trying to reform because they were running scared of their backbenchers, or because of ideology, because of the fact that they don't want to touch net zero or any of these policies. They're bound to continue to fuel the rise in energy prices and so on and so forth. So this is a really bleak picture, which is being fueled by the inability to tackle some problems that Labour has identified but hasn't done anything about, and problems that they want to ignore because they're in hock to a lot of this green idea.
We are trying to uncouple ourselves from a gas market that makes our prices spiral. We are trying to ensure people can get back into work and support them back into work through our work programmes, and the reforms and the changes of that system that nobody thinks works are coming through. And we are making sure we've got our trade deals coming in so we can try and instill a bit more confidence in the economy and a bit more confidence for businesses. So I think we are addressing those issues, and it takes time for them to feed through.
Right. This is a text here from Jackie, who says, on the FTSE 100 doing well despite the economy being bad, well, large parts of the FTSE 100 earn income from overseas. If you want to see how the UK large business is doing, you should look at the FTSE 250, which is only up 7% year on year compared to 20% with the FTSE 100. Well, I feel educated now, and I'm sure we all do. Thank you very much for that. More of your calls in a moment, and text 0345 6060973. You're listening to LBC. It's 8:15.
This is LBC.
At Amazon, over 50% of deliveries now come with less packaging, or with no added packaging at all. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where you chat with friends, where your neighbour's daughter practices guitar, and where we deliver your new noise-cancelling headphones in the manufacturer's packaging. Ah, much better. Reduced packaging from Amazon. We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep, based on 2024 UK and EU Amazon packaging data.
This Saturday, the £15 million lotto jackpot must be won.
Must be won.
Must be won.
Must be won. Must be won.
Yes, the lotto jackpot must be won this Saturday. What are you waiting for? Get your ticket today. Lotto from the National Lottery. Could be you. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
16 minutes past 8. Tom Slater from Spiked Online is with us. Rachel Cunliffe from the New Statesman. Natasha Irons, Labour MP for Croydon East, and Sir Alec Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold. Right, text from Kieran in Earls Court. Is the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap an acceptable excuse for the government to breach its manifesto commitment not to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT? Alec.
I just find it incredible what you're saying. We've got to put up taxes, we haven't got enough money, and we'll increase spending at the same time. It just... it's only been, I think...
We should say they haven't actually announced this.
Well, it's all speculation, isn't it?
More than a hint.
I mean, it came in 2017, and it wasn't retrospective. There was a period of time so that nobody could be pregnant before it was brought in. And, you know, at that time, there was a lot of support for it. And I think there is still a lot of support for it, that people who aren't in work can't have the benefits of those who are in work. But I think the argument about whether you should have it or not is a long tried and tested one, and it was brought in. I think the more incredible thing here is that the Chancellor is claiming that she, even though she raised all the taxes last time and said she was sorting out the economy, is now coming back for tens of billions of pounds more. And in order to get that through, says, well, I'll increase spending as well. I mean, help me out here, Iain. I mean, that's just, if I haven't got any money and I want to borrow more, why do I increase my spending at the same time?
Natasha.
Well, yeah, just as you said, nothing has been formally announced. I don't know what is going to be in that budget.
Well, I think Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, I mean, they've almost said it without actually saying it, haven't they? So let's assume it's going to happen.
But I don't know what the tax and spend commitments are going to look like. I'm not sitting in Treasury.
If they do this, it will cost an extra £3.5 billion.
Yeah, but I don't know how they're intending to raise that money. I don't know. That's me being, you know, as any person would come in and tell you that I'm not writing the budget, and that's the case.
I think that's
so
a fair
what
point.
I would say.
I think that's a fair point.
What I would say is that
no, because that's why business hasn't got any confidence, because it doesn't know either.
Well, I mean, the speculation doesn't help, and we have these events.
They're feeding it.
Who is
the Chancellor and the Prime Minister? What was that speech about last week? I mean, all of this kite flying about tax rises. I mean, you can't say that speculation isn't helpful when your own Prime Minister and Chancellor have been feeding that speculation.
And it also feels like they're warming people up for quite unpopular policies. Lifting the two-child benefit cap is a perfect example of this. If you're looking at it purely in isolation, the claims being made for it lifting anywhere between 350 and north of 500,000 children out of poverty, that sounds like a great idea. But at the same time, in the context of also talking about having to break manifesto commitments, raise income tax, and also the fact that keeping the two-child benefit cap is a pretty popular position. It's something like 59% of the country, 60% of working class voters support keeping the cap. So it's one of those things where it seems like a lot of political pain could be endured for not much benefit, at least where public opinion is concerned. But I think this is one policy amongst a few others which is primarily designed to please backbenchers who, despite us being not that very far into this parliament, are increasingly restive at this point.
What I'd say to that is that it has not been a secret of this government since it came in that it wanted to do something on child poverty. If you look at the things that we've done already around free school meals, around breakfast clubs, around 30 hours of childcare, it has been an absolute priority for this government to tackle child poverty because, look, this isn't about opinion polls. This is about the reality of life in this country. If you grow up poor, your outcomes are poorer and you cost the state more money. This is about tackling the systemic issues of inequality in our country. So no one can be surprised that the government is focused on trying to drive down child poverty. I don't know if the 2-child benefit cap will be lifted.
But if it is, will you be waving your order paper?
I'll be doing that anyway, Ian, because I'm a good backbencher.
Get you nowhere. Take it from an old pro.
So I'm not throwing at anybody. I don't know what's going to be in the budget, but I think that it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that this government is focused on trying to tackle child poverty.
Rachel.
Can I come in and just separate the how you pay for it with whether or not you should do it? Because I do think that those two...
How can you, though?
Because I think those two arguments should be separate. And I think, as Natasha makes the case, that there's an economic case for doing this, which is that lifting the 2-child benefit cap is the most cost-effective way of lifting between 500,000 and 1.5 million children out of poverty. And if you do it at an early age, then you are less likely to have to pay for interventions in later age, unemployment, mental health conditions, physical health conditions, the criminal justice system. We know that early intervention is the most cost-effective way to do it. So purely as a, do I want to lower taxes in the future, you should be having that argument. There's also a moral argument, which is that the way that we talk about child poverty in this country is very different from the way we talk about, for example, pensioner poverty. You're twice as likely to be living in poverty in this country if you're a child than if you are a pensioner. But look at the row that was had over the winter fuel allowance and over the triple lock, this idea that pension benefits should be universal in order to alleviate pensioner poverty, which is very important. Well, when we say, could we do something to alleviate child poverty, suddenly it's all about, well, do they deserve it or not? Now, I can see why the polling is mixed on this, and it is mixed. You get people who feel very, very strongly both ways, and there are people who are making decisions not to have the children that they would like to have because they can't afford it, and they feel very strongly that they don't think it's fair.
And they're being responsible.
They're being responsible, and that their tax money is going towards other families that are not responsible. But it's not the children's fault in that situation.
But that's such a weak argument.
I don't think it's a weird argument to say that children shouldn't go.
Not weird.
I don't think it's a weak argument to say that children shouldn't go hungry because we disapprove of the decisions that their parents may have made. By the way, their parents may have had the children when they were in different financial circumstances, then lost a job, then one of the parents may have died.
And that's where the welfare state should step in. That's always meant to be a safety net.
But they are penalised by the cap as well. So if you were not in poverty when you had the children and then your spouse died or you lost your job or you have a disability or whatever, and now you're in poverty, you have those 3 children, you are still hit by the cap. And more generally, of all the things that my tax money goes towards, children not living in poverty and not going to school hungry, I'm kind of okay with that.
Okay. Let's have a follow-up question on this from Jim in Lincoln. With the Chancellor looking almost certain to break her manifesto pledge of not raising income tax, do you think if such a fundamental promise is broken, it should trigger a general election? And if not, why not? Surely there has to be consequences. Otherwise, there's no point whatsoever in writing a manifesto if they're simply not worth the paper that they're written on. Tom?
Well, I think this raises a really important question. I mean, there was some polling that was put out by Clearwater Strategy today, not to be harping on about polls the entire time. It was like 2/3 of people they spoke to said that if Rachel Reeves does break her manifesto commitment on not raising tax, that she should resign, which is, I think, to be honest, I think voters, unfortunately, become quite cynical about what is promised to them at elections these days. There is often a kind of case of voting for the lesser of two evils has been a factor for some time. But there is a real question of political accountability here. When you've got a party which is breaking promises, and in a way the problem with the last manifesto was not only that they've chosen to break some of these commitments, it seems like, but also that the manifesto was so thin, there was so little in there that they were trying to kind of get over the line without ruffling too many feathers. It then became a complete mystery as to what they were going to do when in government. So anything that creates more political accountability, whether or not there should be some kind of clear-cut mechanism which means that a new poll is called, I think that would have all kinds of problems. But it's a reminder that I think where the gap between what politicians pledge, what they end up doing, and the pledges that they tend to break, it's something that increasingly infuriates voters.
Just on the thing of manifesto, which other pledges has the government broken?
No, I was talking about, if anything, the issue with the manifesto was that it was quite thin on the ground. There was a kind of the Ming Vase strategy.
So which ones have we broken?
We were about to break one of the key ones in relation to
which ones have we actually broken?
I didn't say you'd broken any so far. I was talking.
I think you actually did. You did.
To be fair, Tom, you did.
In terms of the point I was making, if I didn't articulate it well, was we're now looking at a situation where in a budget there's going to be quite clearly key manifesto pledges broken, but also there wasn't much in that manifesto to begin with to give people a clear sense of where this government was going. And I think those two things together is a bit of a toxic mix.
Okay, but look, if we went down this road, then we'd be running Brexit, wouldn't we? Because there was a number on the side of a bus that didn't materialise either.
It did actually.
Oh, sorry, I am going to step in on that one. I'm sorry.
Can I just finish my point?
I'm not a Brexiteer, as Iain knows.
I'm not saying you are. But I think on the thing of just the reason I asked which pledges but that was intimated that we'd broken before, that's not the case, and nothing has happened yet. The budget hasn't happened yet, so I think that was a bit of a straight.
No, you can keep returning to that. If I misspoke, I apologise. But you're about in this budget to break manifesto pledges, just because it's not written down yet. It's going to happen. Rerunning of elections, I think every political party, when they're in power, will have to look at the world as it is as they find it, not as they hope it to be, and you have to make decisions based on that. And I think, like I said, I think we'd have to rerun a few other things in the past if that was.
I completely get why you can't enter the territory of saying, well, if we do this, then I will think that. I completely get that. But can you tell me this? In the conversations that you're having with your colleagues and friends on the Labour backbenches, is this like number one subject of discussion? Is she going to break an election promise, and what does that mean for us keeping our seats?
Okay, I think colleagues would be, of course, we're discussing everything that is of value and is of importance when it comes to the budget, and we all want to know what's going to come up in it. And we're having conversations about what the implications are on the country, on our constituents, or on our post boxes. Of course, we're having those conversations.
Rachel?
I actually partly agree with Tom, which I wasn't expecting to, that if parties, and this is across the board, put things in their manifesto that they know they can't deliver, or they know they're going to find very difficult to deliver, and then get into power and are unable to deliver that, it saps confidence and trust, not just in that political party, but in the democratic system as a whole. And I think your example of that is 14 years of Conservative government, where we ended up with the highest tax burden, where the houses that we were promised never got built, where it increasingly just felt like life was getting much, much worse at the end of that parliament than it had been.
Migration to the tens of thousands is a classic example.
You've already seen what that's done to Conservative poll ratings, but also to faith in the democratic system. I sit in a lot of focus groups, and one of the things that I hear a lot from people across the political spectrum is it's really hard to trust anyone at the moment, and I think that is dangerous. I think it is ridiculous, though, to suggest that we change our entire democratic system of how elections work and what's the process for calling elections and what's the process for forming a government and the parliamentary makeup and all of that because someone doesn't like something that a government does. I think Rachel Reeves will find it very difficult to sell an increase in income tax if that's what she ends up doing. I think the trust point is something that she should be thinking, I'm sure she is thinking very, very hard about. And I think voters will let their displeasure with that decision, if that is the decision, be known at the ballot box in local elections, the next general election, to their MP. That's the process. So can we stop having this idea that anytime something happens in politics that we don't like, we're going to tear down our democratic system? It's just ridiculous.
Before I bring Alec in, let's bring in Robbie in Chelmsford. He's got an interesting question. Robbie, hi.
Hi, good evening. Context for this being, I thought it was a kooky question, but I did hear Andrew Marr of his parish and Michael Gove kind of agreeing with something I've thought for a while, so I thought I'd ask it and test whether you guys agree that rather than the big set-piece fiscal events we have, i.e. the budget, the government of today should actually manage tax and spend policies in a more dynamic way. I don't mean every single day decide what the rate of income tax should be, but react more to the things that go on. We talk about being affected and buffeted by global pressures like tariffs and things. Shouldn't the government just have more license to do it? And it would end this frenzy of speculation we live in. And
so basically abolish another part of our constitution and abolish budgets, Alec.
Look, I mean, let's get down to some realities here. The vast majority... No. In every single election, a majority of the country does not want the government who wins. Fact, because I can't think of an election where they got more than 50% of the vote. even when it was a two-party system, because you had a bit here and a bit there.
1955 might have been the last one.
Yeah. Was it? I mean, again, it just doesn't happen, does it? The reality is that you should not be calling an election because things are unpopular. We have a parliamentary system. If 90 Labour MPs decide that they've had enough and they want to vote themselves out of a job, off we go. Don't think that's going to happen. But that's just being crass. The reality is we've already been talking about market confidence. We're talking about business confidence. The idea that every time the going got tough or had to break a manifesto, we're all off to the country again. Who's going to invest? Who is going to invest in that unstable situation? I mean, look how many years it went on in Italy. Let's go to Israel. 5 general elections in 2 years. I mean, it's just almost impossible to build what goes on. And so I think, you have to be sensible about when people say, well, I want this government out. Well, you've got time. You've got time. I did say to one the other day, I think we had this debate once before, Ian, on here from somebody about saying young people think democracy's dead and should have a dictatorship. And someone in the pub was saying about, we should have a dictatorship. And they were talking about how much they hate this government, how we can get rid of them. I said, I thought we wanted a dictatorship. This is what used to be called a democratic dictatorship when you've got a massive landslide majority. You make that accusation in Margaret Thatcher's day. That's the system we have, and decisions are made. Ultimately, people don't forget, you do get counted at the ballot box. On the manifesto thing, I think manifestos are ridiculous, quite frankly. They write PhDs.
Let's get rid of them as well. Get rid of them. Get rid of budget.
Very few people read them,
you have to say, I didn't read it. I think you have to say, I'll keep the door open with it. I think you have to say what your broad directions are. What is it you want to do broadly? What's your overall policies, etc.? The best manifesto I ever saw was Tony Blair's in 97 on a credit card. Did anybody read any more than that credit card? The thing, education, all that sort of stuff. We write all this guff, and then we immediately box ourselves in, and we have to break promises. What is it? What's your general direction? What are you trying to do? What are you going to do there? Right, this is what I'm trying to do. This is be the results. If I get it wrong, you will vote me out and look for something else. But if there's one lesson the Conservative Party have learnt the hard way, and I think every party should learn this, you can win one election on populism, you'll never deliver it, and then they'll go to the next populist party who say they can deliver it. Because when you come out with stuff you cannot deliver, people generally say, well, what was the point in voting for that? I'll vote for somebody else because they sound a bit more credible on it. You've got to be honest with people, but the reality is that there's an economic situation now in this country caused by far too much spending. And my question to Natasha is, do you foresee what department or bill your government could cut and get through your backbenches? Because it was a disaster when you tried to cut just £5 billion off welfare. So do you foresee any major cut in revenue spending that you will actually allow your government to deliver in this Parliament?
Well, I think you will see changes to the welfare system. I don't think... I think the issue colleagues may have had is that we're trying to change a system and take money out of it at the same time. But the idea really is to change that system so we can prevent people going onto it in the first place and bring down spending. So I think there will be changes on that, and it will be done in a different way. But I don't have the department budgets for every single department, and I don't know where we would lop things off. I think we have to be very careful, though, to not return to austerity. I think we've seen a lot of things creaking. If we, hopefully, at some point we'll probably talk about prisons. Where you cut things, they have a real world impact, and our public services are not functioning in the way they need to. We can be efficient, we can use technology, we can do all these things, but if you cut too severely and we do it in a way that is not good for everybody, it doesn't work.
Right, we'll move on to some other questions in just a few moments' time. It's 8:33 News Headlines with Matt Hewitt.
Millions of women who claim they were not told about the state pension age rising could get compensation after all. The government will retake its previous decision against payouts because an old document has come to light. The Shadow Justice Secretary says the criminal justice system looks a total mockery after figures were released showing 91 prisoners have been freed by mistake since April. A digital team is looking at using AI chatbots to help with release of inmates from HMP Wandsworth. And people waiting for their asylum claim to be processed can continue to be housed at the protest-hit Bell Hotel in Essex. A judge has denied the local council's attempt at removing them, saying the degree of planning and environmental harm from the current use of the hotel is limited. LBC weather. Rain moving across the country tonight, heavy at times. Drier with clear spells later, but staying wet in northern Scotland. Windy for most, lows of 9 to 14 degrees.
This is LBC.
Managing your business is a big task. To then stay on top of the numbers as well, you're only human. That's why the Intuit QuickBooks AI-powered platform supports your business growth as the #1 recommended cloud accounting software. Intuit QuickBooks. Based on a survey of 506 UK accounting professionals, verify at quickbooks.co.uk/verify.
Step aboard the legend of the Titanic, London's award-winning exhibition devoted to the world's most famous ocean liner at Dock X Canada Water. Walk her decks, explore her cabins, discover her secrets. With 360-degree projections, VR, an interactive metaverse, artifacts and more. Book your tickets today at legendoftitanic.com.
Calling all black cab drivers. Let's talk about those quieter times when your meter's taking a little nap. Why not consider Uber? We can give your meter a wake-up call. Join close to 1,000 black cab drivers already on Uber and gain access to millions of passengers at the touch of a button. Black cabs on Uber are priced by your meter, and the service fee will be no more than 5% until the end of 2025. Turn downtime into prime time. Go to uber.com/black cabs to start earning today. Terms and conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Let me reintroduce my panel to you. Tom Slater is editor of Spiked Online. For those of our listeners who have never heard of Spiked Online, shame on them, but what is it?
We are the magazine that wants to change the world, not just report on it. We write about politics, obviously current affairs, but with a particular focus on freedom of speech, democracy, many of the stuff that we've been talking about already today.
And do you classify yourselves as left or right? Or
we are a publication.
You're a funny mix, really.
We confuse people, which I like. Very much a left-wing history, but the way in which the world has turned, suddenly standing up for things like freedom of speech and democracy makes you some sort of sinister right-winger these days. But I'm increasingly relaxed about the labels people apply to things as long as they agree with the principles and the things we're putting out there.
Talking of sinister right-wingers, Natasha Irons is here, Labour MP for Croydon. Where do you place yourself in sort of the Labour Party lefty spectrum?
I'm definitely not cynical, sinister right-winger. That's the first time. I bet you my husband's going to put on a tea towel or something. I don't know. I place myself on the Labour doorstep. That's where I am.
Oh, bless. Rachel Cunliffe is Labour MP. No, she isn't. One day, Rachel. Have you got any ambitions?
Yes, the second time. You know what? The more I do this job and the more I meet MPs and see up close what they have to deal with and what their job is, the more I think I would rather do pretty much any other job.
You don't think I could do it better than they?
I absolutely do not think that. I also don't particularly like people, and I think that you do have to like people to be an MP. But I have huge admiration.
Sorry, colleagues.
Did you say you don't like people?
No, prefer cats. Wow.
Well, if you said dogs, I could understand that.
I actually prefer dogs as well.
Oh, so you've redeemed yourself. So Alec Shelbrooke is Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold and fellow West Ham supporter, which is obviously why he keeps getting invited back.
I'm smiling.
Finally. Right, text question from Jennifer in Barnet. How would you fix the utter circus that is our prison system? So you correctly predicted that, Natasha. The Justice Secretary, David Lammy, revealed today in his bright, shiny new suit that 91 people have been wrongly released from prison between the start of April and the end of October, and that another inmate was wrongfully released last Monday and may or may not still be at large. How can they not know whether he is or not? I assume it's a he. Rachel, let's start with you.
Oh, so many things. Okay, so I was watching David Lammy this afternoon. I was watching...
He was doing his best to be boring, wasn't he?
I don't think it was boring at all. I think there's some great revelations there. I was watching Lord Timpson in the Lords yesterday on the same topic. So among the things he revealed was that, yes, there have been an increase in early or mistaken releases in the last year, but there were, I think, 860 over the last Conservative government. And the revelation that wasn't a surprise to me, because I look at the justice system quite closely, but might be a surprise to your listeners, is it's all still based on paper. Mm-hmm. It's based on paper. It's based on boxes and boxes of paper forms, often handwritten. I was interviewing somebody who was an inmate at Wandsworth Prison, which is the prison at the heart of this particular scandal, who pointed out that not only is it on paper, it's often handwritten. So when these mistakes get made, they are made because the form is blurry, the handwriting isn't great, because prison officers who are very, very, very overstretched and also lack experience, and that was a big point that David Lammy made today, are trying to make quite complex calculations about how long somebody should be in prison based on their sentence, based on multiple offences, based on various rules and guidelines that will have changed. They're trying to make those calculations by hand. They're trying to do it all. They may not entirely be sure that the prisoner they're dealing with is the right one, because the system, again, is based on paper. And there have been cases of mistaken releases because they literally let the wrong person out. And there have also been cases where the individual concerned has said, I don't think I need to be released now. I think I've got a bit of time left, and they've been released anyway. So the entire system is in crisis because there hasn't been any kind of investment in it really over the last 20 years, particularly technological investment.
But no extra investment would stop somebody from... if they're going to release somebody that they know that the prisoner says, I shouldn't be released now, and they still do it, that's got nothing to do with extra investment.
That's to do with
human stupidity.
That's to do with people who are systems that are incredibly understaffed. So understaffed to the point that Wandsworth is a massively overcrowded prison, where prisoners are spending 23 hours a day locked up in their cells because they do not have enough officers to release them. They do not have enough officers to enact the release process. It's quite a convoluted process. It's clearly a process that's not working particularly well, but it's a convoluted process. They're really overstretched. They're very inexperienced. And again, they're dealing with a system where emails and documents and information from the court is not getting passed on. It's not working its way through. So if the system says this person is due to be released, generally they're probably going to believe the system rather than believe the individual. And that's what we've seen. And by the way, it works in reverse too. It's not going to make the news, but there are also numerous cases of inmates where they've come to the end of their sentence. They should be released, and the system has made a mistake and said, no, you should stay in prison.
That question was asked today.
It was asked today. It doesn't get nearly as much attention, but actually these are people's lives that we're dealing with here.
Alex, so it's 14 years of Conservative failure.
Yeah, would be, wouldn't it? But it's been going on for donkey. I mean, look, it's a crumbling Victorian estate. That didn't just appear over the last 14 years. But I am slightly worried about this focus on the paper system, which obviously is a problem, but let's not pretend this is going to solve everything, because let's face it, government IT projects are a total disaster. But worse than being a total disaster is that they cost a fortune. Now, if somebody was to come in and say, you know what, we can share an Excel sheet on the cloud and you just have to tap in the formula that's changed, maybe there's a cell, you just put 40% instead of 50%, calculates it and comes up and says it's green. I don't mind that, but if we say, well, we need to put in this bang whiz system, it's going to link up the courts, link up this. Come on, let's go through the IT projects that are an utter failure in government. I mean, yes, Horizon, but everybody forgets about the NHS IT system. Still doesn't really work to this day. Everything was supposed to be linked up. It's a total disaster. And the reason these things are disasters is because governments, whoever they are, say, I want to order this IT system. Off they go. They start designing and say, oh, can you make it do this? Oh, can you make it do that? And suddenly it's being redesigned in a way. So let's not just get into the trap of where we are with paper. I do think one of the other things was, I remember when we were campaigning leading up to 2010, we had a plan that we would sell off the Victorian estate, where we build new prisons and ultimately pay for those by selling off the Victorian estate to developers. Now, why do you think that didn't happen? Because they couldn't get planning permission to do the things they needed to do to these Grade 1 listed buildings.
Yeah, I bet they're listed, aren't they?
Listed buildings. So they're saying, well, we can't make them into flats. We can't do anything like that because they need X, Y, and Z. No, you can't do that. So now,
this is where we need a dictatorship.
Well, no, what we need is a sensible planning system. I mean, don't get me started on English heritage, making churches replace the lead with lead and then wondering why it gets nicked again. This is the nonsense. Okay. So I mean, it's a whole wider picture to be looking at here.
Natasha.
Well, look, I'm sorry. There is issues, systemic issues that have just been pointed out with the prison system, but we've had over a decade of lost time to try and fix it. Now, I think the paper-based stuff is quite important, because if a prison doesn't even have a spreadsheet that says this person's come in, this person's gone out, that is an administrative nightmare, especially then if you couple that with, I think it was like 30% reduction in funding through austerity for the justice system. Couple that then with cuts to staff and pressure and the fact that we haven't had enough prison places. We only had 500 places in the last 14 years, I think, added to the estate when we need about 14,000.
Well, we wouldn't if we actually didn't imprison so many people.
Sure, I mean, and there's a massive argument and a lot of work that needs to go into keeping people out of prisons and keeping them out of the justice system, and I appreciate that, but let's deal with what we've currently got. We've got prisons that were close to collapse. This is not an acceptable situation. We shouldn't be having these types of mistakes. The Deputy Prime Minister has set out how he's put in place more stringent checks. They're trying to, they've got Dame Lynn Owens doing a review of the whole system, but also just immediately, in the short term, how do we stop this being the most backwards system? Mm-hmm. How do we take this out of paperwork and put this on at least a sensible spreadsheet where people can monitor what's going on?
I mean, the fact that when the Epping asylum seeker who was accidentally released, the fact that he went back up multiple times, we're relying on the good-natured response of a criminal who is slated for deportation for them to actually be kept inside or taken to the place where they're supposed to be taken. It's of course facile to lay this at the feet of David Lammy. The issue has gotten worse over the past year, but it seems like there's a lot of long issues in train. I think people have this sense right now that the British state is incredibly decrepit, and the prison estate is a perfect example of that. And it's one of those things where it doesn't get a lot of attention because it's not something that you can necessarily campaign on. It's not something that catches a lot of headlines until something goes catastrophically wrong. But also, just picking up what you were saying there, Alec, we can't really be in a situation where even trying to talk about investment and trying to improve the service feels like we're on a hiding to nothing as well. If there is a problem with government contracts, they're becoming bloated, they're becoming dysfunctional, that of course should be addressed. But it's one of those things where that cannot become an excuse for not dealing with it.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. And keep it simple is the point I'm making. Don't let it become a normal government IT contract.
No, exactly, because we're now in a situation where decisions and policies in relation to crime and punishment are being made purely on the basis of how terrible the system is and what capacity is. Early release of prisoners is a really good example. There's all kinds of arguments for saying certain types of offences should be people sent home more on a tag, or there are certain types of offences which shouldn't land you in prison at all. But if you're making those determinations and letting people out early purely because there isn't space, that's obviously a ridiculous position to be in.
Right, more questions to come, and we'll have our famous fun question at the end, which Tom hasn't experienced yet, but is about to. It's 8:47.
This is LBC.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Angela Rippon, what are you doing here?
I've come to tell you about using energy flexibly, Albert.
Flexibly?
Yes, smart meter owners could get rewarded for moving their energy use, like doing the laundry at off-peak times.
So I don't need to do the splits?
No, Albert. Nobody wants to see that.
Get rewarded for using energy flexibly, only with a smart meter. Search Get a Smart Meter today.
Eligibility and availability vary. Consumer action required. Reward schemes and tariffs available to selected customers from selected suppliers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard your flight to Geneva. This is your captain speaking, and I would like to take a second to welcome our very special guests. All the skis and snowboards that enjoy a free flight to Winter Wonderland.
The best skiing experiences start with the right airline. Book your winter holiday now on Swiss.com and enjoy free gear transport.
Every investor has a future in mind. Whether it's seeing your kids through uni or picturing yourself retiring in Tuscany. The hard part can be knowing how to get there. JP Morgan Personal Investing can help you see the path ahead. With our intuitive app, expert support, and 150 years of JP Morgan's investing experience, you can start making more informed investment decisions today. Search JP Morgan Personal Investing. Invest with clarity. Capital at risk.
This Saturday, the £15 million lotto jackpot must be won.
Must be won.
Must be won. Must be won. Must be won.
Yes, the lotto jackpot must be won this Saturday. What are you waiting for? Get your ticket today. Lotto from the National Lottery. It could be you. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
After 9 o'clock, we're going to be talking about family feuds. Have you got one, a current one, or have you had one and you've managed to solve it somehow? I'm really looking forward to this hour, so don't let me down. I want some really juicy stories. But before that, we are going to get some more questions into Tom Slater, Rachel Cunliffe, Natasha Irons and Sir Alec Shelbrooke. Tomasz is in Maidenhead, who says, what will the digital ID scheme actually achieve? The government seems to change its mind about what it's for every week. Now, LBC has been shown a poll which suggests more of the public oppose the introduction of the digital ID scheme than support it, and that 4 in 5 people are worried about their data being stolen if this proposal becomes reality. Tom?
Well, I think he's exactly right in that the justifications for it have changed every couple of days, it seems like. This was originally pitched to us when Keir Starmer announced it as a key way to crack down on illegal migration, to stop people working in the black market. You already do have to check people's eligibility to work, and I don't think the people who run an illegal car wash are necessarily going to take too much notice that we've got a new app on people's phones and that they should pay attention to it. We then hear questions about it's going to kind of streamline the way in which you can access various things that you're entitled to under the British state. I saw Keir Starmer suggesting the other week it might remove certain encumbrances to getting mortgages. I mean, we're getting to the point where it's becoming the thing that will solve all of life's problems. And I think that's one of the reasons people are becoming increasingly suspicious of it. Before Keir Starmer actually announced it, according to some More in Common polling, there was more than 50% support in the country for ID cards. As soon as he announced it, it went down something like 30%. He's got the kind of reverse Midas touch where this is concerned, which I think speaks to a little lack of faith in this government more broadly, but also the fact that the way they have announced it has only fed people's fears that it will be dysfunctional, a problem for privacy, a problem for civil liberties, and that it's ultimately not going to work. So I think it's one of those things where this was such a key policy, and yet it's just left more questions than answers and a lot more cynicism about the scheme itself.
Natasha?
I think it's there to. I mean, we had this conversation just about prisons and paperwork and all that stuff, and this is a way of trying to make life easier for people and manage their official documents in an easier way, but also to access bits of the state that are sometimes tricky to get access to. And yes, there is the benefit of trying to tackle things like illegal working and being able to make sure that the people that are in work here have the right to be in work here. I think I appreciate the debate around data security and everybody and raising awareness really of people's data and what's happening to it. I think we should have that same conversation when we look at things like social media companies and how your data is accessed there. But ultimately it's to make life easier.
Alec?
I don't think it will happen. I think it will run out of time. I don't think there's any clear objective really laid down as to why it wants to be there. It seems to be a classic back of the fag packet policy. But just go back a moment. We were talking about the prison service just purely operating on paper. Why, instead of spending all this money on an ID system, which is, by the way, everybody at the age of 16 gets given a national insurance card, which allegedly you can't have a job unless you've got a national insurance number. So, I mean, there is that sort of stuff already exists. But if, we talk about what we prioritise, are we going to raise taxes? Are we going to increase spending? Is it really the government's priority to spend it on ID cards rather than maybe digitalising the prison system, which a lot of people say may go a long way to solving those problems?
So I think there is a case for simplifying and making it easier to access public services. And yes, you've got a national insurance number, but you've also got a passport number and an NHS number and a driving licence number and a tax number and all kinds of other things, and streamlining that. I think the key question is the one that was raised by the person who texted in, which is you've got to know what problem it is that you're trying to solve at the start when you start building it. So the functionality is there and also the cybersecurity is there. If you start letting it spiral and start treating it like it will solve everything, then you are going to end up with something that is massively over budget and probably doesn't do any of the core functions as well as if you kept it really targeted. So I really hope that the team in government that is looking at it knows what it wants to achieve, though the messaging around it has certainly been very confused.
Right. Gracie in Leeds says, with reports saying the Beeb's lawyers think Donald Trump does not have a good case, that the BBC badly hurt his reputation with this documentary, should it say sorry to him this week or fight back against the president's threat? threats. Now, if a lawsuit is filed, it will be done in Florida because the documentary was aired here in the UK more than a year ago, which is the limit for any defamation case to be filed under British law. Didn't know that. Alec, let's start with you.
Look.
All fairly brief.
So I talk to children in schools all the time and I say to them, be careful where you get your news feed from. Always ask yourself this question. Could you sue the person who's written it? Because if you can't guarantee that what you're reading is true. What the BBC have done is create a piece of fake news, and they've undermined their whole editorial ability. We can get into an argument all day long about the climate change debate, the trans debate, but they actually did splice this together and they put it in a way that is defamatory, however you want to look at it. Now, my point is, fine, let him issue the writ because it proves my point. It's a credible broadcast organisation who, in his mind, have defamed him, and he can issue a writ to sue them. And that's my point, which I try to make to the children. If you can't sue, how can you have any faith in what's been written? You don't know if it's true or not because you don't know who's behind it, what's going on. So I think it actually brings sucker to the idea that credible news organisations do have a level of responsibility, even when they might get it horribly wrong like this.
Rachel?
I'm not going to go into defending the BBC and their editorial decisions, which I think was a massive error of judgment and a big mistake. I do think, though, we should see this in the context of Donald Trump continuing to try and rewrite history as to what happened on January the 6th and continue to claim that he won that election and that the attempted insurrection, it was an insurrection, where a number of individuals tried to overturn a democratic electoral result, didn't happen. The fact that the BBC have handed him ammunition is really, really unhelpful to that. But let's not pretend that he is trying to create his own version of history. Apologise? Oh, if they think that means that they're not going to get sued, then fine, because we're going to be the ones who end up paying for it.
Natasha?
I was under the impression they already had. I don't know. Maybe
I thought the letter. I thought the letter from the chairman had issued an apology. Yeah.
So look, I think that we always, when it comes to the BBC, when these sort of things happen, we tend to get into this sort of existential question about whether they should exist or not, rather than dealing with the fact that this organisation clearly has a problem with applying its own editorial standards in a range of different situations. What I want to see from the BBC is better leadership and better governance, because this sort of thing seems to be happening. Because I sit on the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, and in the short time I've been on that committee, they've been in front of us quite a few times. I think they if they haven't already apologised, they probably should. And they need, then when the charter renewal comes up, we need to put how you demonstrate impartiality at the heart of that.
And personally, I'd like to see a lot of apologies which aren't on the Donald Trump edit, which was only one very small part of that memo that was leaked to the Telegraph. But the hundreds of instances in which BBC Arabic were platforming known anti-Semites, the hundreds of instances which are located of stories about the trans debate being censored. I understand why this has taken all of the focus, because it involves the leader of the free world and potentially a very exorbitant lawsuit. But there is a litany of not just editorial slip-ups, but serious oversight, serious questions about even very bigoted coverage where Israel and Gaza is concerned, certainly, which hasn't really taken up much of the discussion so far.
Right, let's move on to our fun question. It's from Eleanor in Hereford. With the I'm a Celebrity campmates having been announced, if you had to go into the jungle, who else would you want in there alongside you, and who else would you definitely not want in there alongside you? Tom?
It's a tricky one, this, because I was trying to think about, first of all, I'm an insufferable townie who can't do anything for himself in that kind of environment. So I was trying to think, I couldn't remember the names of those two fellas a few years ago who were kind of making a name for themselves as the outdoorsy types. They had various kind of reality shows. Whoever they were, someone tell me.
Bear Grylls?
One of them, perfect. Not Keir Starmer, because not even for political reasons, but he's just not one of life's great conversationalists and entertainers, I dare say, which you would probably need in an environment like that.
Natasha?
I would probably take Ian Wright, because I feel like he's like my generation's uncle. So I feel like he would be a good sort of, a person to kind of just,
You're talking about the footballer, not the ex-Labour MP.
I'm talking about the footballer, yeah. Arsenal football legend.
To West Ham.
There you go. Everyone's happy with that choice then. But I think around the campfire, you'd be able to give some good advice about life. In terms of who I wouldn't want to take with me, if we're going, I don't. Let's go back in history. I wouldn't take Margaret Thatcher with me if I could. I would leave her.
Banished from the programme forever now.
I'll take that. That was fine.
Rachel.
So I reject the premise of this question because the thing that I would like even less than being an MP is going on I'm a Celebrity. There's no amount of money you could pay me to do that. But I was thinking of, I think my person who I would most like and most dislike is probably the same, and that's Matt Hancock. Because when I started watching, when he was on it, I thought, this man is so annoying. How can you possibly survive 5 minutes in a camp in his company? But then he turned out to actually be really good at it, and you want someone who's good at it and can do the challenges. So I'm not really sure where that leaves me.
Alec, do you want to remind our audience who Matt Hancock was?
It slips me by, Ian. Here today, gone tomorrow. I'd have to take David Beckham, Ian, because he is my sporting hero.
Is he?
Oh, he is, yeah. Even as a West Ham fan, David Beckham is my absolute. I think maybe it's generational. You know, I'm 49. He's just turned 50. Maybe it's that generational thing. But I honestly think he's one of the greatest footballers I've ever seen, and I would just love to be talking about the tournaments, etc. And he could teach me how to do a free kick. However, I would not take the Chancellor because she might get 10 stars, but she'd only give us 5 for dinner.
Oh, cutting satire there from you, Alec. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for coming on the panel tonight. Tomorrow we have the Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock, the businessman James Reed, who's the boss of the employment agency Reed, the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams, and the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Sir Ranil Jayawardena. But coming up in a moment, we are going to talk about David Beckham. You want to stay for this, Alec, don't you? Because he's in the middle of a feud, or his family are in the middle of a feud with his son, Brooklyn. Now, I jokingly said that we would having Brooklyn Beckham on the programme tonight, but I was lying. Of course we haven't. But I do want to talk about family feuds, because I think virtually everyone out there will know of a family feud that they've been involved in, maybe for completely ridiculous reasons. But I want to know, how do you solve a family feud? How do you get over it? And even if you do, 10 years on, you still remember, don't you? You may forgive, but you never forget. 0345 6060 973. Your story's next.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, ministers say new evidence means they're reconsidering a decision that WASPy women should not receive compensation. It relates to more than 3 million women born in the 1950s whose state pension age was raised to match men's. The Work and Pension Secretary